Over the course of this driver mini series, we have looked in a fair bit of depth at how far drivers have advanced over the last 10 years. So now it's time to grab the metaphorical crystal ball and to look forward to where drivers are going over the next 10 years. Who would have foreseen 10 years ago where we would be now? What seemed like small changes year on year by the big manufacturers, when viewed as a full decade of work, is mightily impressive. Now this video is as much me guessing what's going to happen 10 years from now, so we take it with a pinch of salt, but the reality is the changes will continue to come in a similar drip feed year on year to what we have now. Well, that won't stop me predicting some very cool things for 10 years time. As we head into 2022 though, it's very clear that the game's governing bodies, the RNA and USGA, well, they're very worried about where driver distance is going, especially on tour. And they're trying to stay ahead of the big manufacturers with new rules. Now, we will always have that in golf, restrictions, but the big manufacturers, they'll continue to find ways around any limits. They always do. After all, remember, the groove change, well, it only took the club makers a couple of years to get the spin numbers back up when that kicked in. They've curbed the COR, or the springiness of faces on drivers. They've capped the club head size at 460, and they've introduced several other restrictions, but the pros just keep hitting it longer, with even the likes of Bryson DeChambeau and Phil Mickelson, for instance. This year, actually they used shafts on occasion this year that were over 47 and 48 inches in length. If I had made this video last year, I would have predicted that one of the big changes we would see over the next 10 years is much longer shafts in our drivers. It's a trend we've seen before. But plus the technology to allow us all, even the Sunday golfer level, to make longer shafts much more usable and stable than they are currently. Longer shafts, that means bigger swing arcs and more distance. But now, I'm not so sure that is going to happen, because the RNA and the USGA, they've already moved to shorten the length of drivers on tour to 46 inches from January the 1st, 2022. And while the same rule doesn't apply at club level and for retail drivers, we'll just have to watch this space to see how it develops. The shaft though is the engine of the driver, and compared to the head, there hasn't been a huge amount of innovation over the last 10 years. And even if the shaft length advantages cannot be availed of, watch out for big improvements in shaft materials, flex, and finding the right shaft for you to drive the ball further and more accurately by 2032. Now, driver materials, as in metal and carbon technology, well, they've advanced hugely over the last 5 years. We can all agree on that, as have manufacturing tolerances. However amazing, though, we think the multi-material drivers of today are, I still think there's plenty of scope for improvement over the next 10 years. The carbon weave and the crown, well, that's going to get even lighter and stronger, more and more stronger. New metal alloys will be used in the sole, even in the face, and there's still a ways to go. 3D printing in terms of club head weighting is in its infancy, with Cobra emerging as the real innovators there. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. But there's going to be a big breakthrough for me in driver head adjustability over the next 10 years. I really believe it. If you look at all the brands and all their adjustable drivers, they all have their proprietary systems, but take a step back and they're all pretty similar. Metal weights, either sliding around or secured in ports. The same wrench does pretty much every brand. A decade from now though, I see weighting evolving to being completely different. One company is going to break the mold and the rest will follow. And what if all the weighting in 10 years time, it's internal and adjusts automatically via Bluetooth or manually via some sort of other system, and data feedback from hitting shots on the range? Whatever happens, I think we'll evolve from the click and go weighting systems of today to a much more precise model. Another something that I think will advance over the next 10 years is Hosel adjustability. Now, the present systems of Loft and Lie are very clever, but they're really simple, and they basically alter the angle that the shaft goes into the club to make the club more or less lofted at address. The problem with this is that the face opens and closes when you adjust, and adjusting say a 9-degree driver to 11 degrees, it's never going to look at address like an 11-degree driver with a glued in shaft. It's going to look open or closed. Lynx came up with a very innovative driver called the Prowler SFT, or switch face technology, a few years ago, and that had interchangeable faces to adjust the true loft of the driver. And it'll take one more great idea like that to move us all forward. So for me, there's a big chasm here to be addressed to make Hosel adjustability much better, and it will be in 10 years time, I think. And what about the driver head itself? Will the shape evolve over the next 10 years? Well, I don't think it will really. I've seen over the last 20 years everything from square to pear to almost triangular with turbulators and aero this and that, but it keeps returning to the traditional shape we kind of expect the driver head to have. There'll be more buzzword features as we go on year, injected this, molded that, twist the other, 3D the other. Marketing departments will always convince us that newer is better, but I'm thinking the overall head will stay much the same. And finally, in 10 years time, technology will be very much to the fore. I bet our phones will be integrally linked to our driver setup and performance. TrackMan of today will be replaced by a little app on your phone that is far more accurate. The app might even show you where on the face you're hitting the ball on the range, your swing speed, path, everything, and either show you how to correct it in your swing or what to adjust in your driver to fix it, or as I said earlier, maybe do it automatically for you. Maybe it'll be a case of 10 swings or 10 hits on the range before your round, and then your phone tells you how to set up your driver for that day without you having to really understand what all the data means. Or maybe if you grip the driver differently to your normal setting, sensors in the grip might alert you to that. Does it all seem very far-fetched? Well, at the pace the world is evolving, I'm not so sure it is. Golf is too big a sport not to have our phones linked to our equipment. So I believe it will happen. As I said at the outset, the R&A and USGA, well, they're worried heading into 2022 and trying to plug holes as drivers advance. And golf enjoys this renewed popularity all over the world. Every golfer will want to hit it longer and straighter and be like the pros, and that's what drives sales. Now, will there be a split? Strip back drivers for the professionals and technology laden ones for recreational golfers. Think about how different the professional long drivers of today are. But that is a different form of the game. It has already happened with other sports, with bikes for instance. Last week I cycled 80 kilometers at a fast pace with some tough climbs in Austria, while my wife, who hasn't cycled in years, cycled alongside me at the same pace, no problem, on an electric bike. Will the same concept happen in golf? A divergence, strip back drivers for pros and technology aided ones for club golfers. In the next 10 years it may well do. Would you be disappointed if it happened? Would it feel a bit like cheating? I always love to be using the same equipment as the professionals, but as I get older, the promise of 10 free extra yards is pretty nice too. And who knows where we'll be in 2032. We know from talking to the top brass in the big manufacturers that they always have their next 3 or 4 drivers already planned out in advance. So the 2032 driver, it may already be in a secret computer file somewhere or in a prototype form in some laboratory. Now join me next time for the final part of our driver mini series, where I'll reveal my top 5 favourite drivers ever. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe to the Golfbidder YouTube channel, and you can catch us every day on our socials for the latest equipment news and reviews. For me for now though, it's Donal.